Good evening and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from our brand new studio. This is Fired Up with Bob, where we put on a new show each Thursday, which will be released at 5 o'clock in the evening. Fired Up is rebroadcast on radio on KELY 1230 AM. That is a master station. It appears on 7 other stations besides that on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. If you have a radio and don't have a computer to watch the YouTube show, you can pick us up on your way to church on Sunday morning. I'm sorry, on Saturday morning. I have my out-of-date outline from the previous time right here. This show is about guns, related political issues, and self-defense issues. We are on YouTube, as I said. You can go to Fired Up with Bob on YouTube and find us. The shows stay up forever. Once they're up, they're up. So you're actually capable of seeing things that I said 3 years ago that are totally wrong, and they're still there. So you can look at that anytime you want and laugh. I know that I do. If you have a question or comment about our show, you can send me a text to bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my home recorder, which is 702-257-1060. We do answer every incoming email. If you leave your contact information, we will call you back. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States. I like to pick out several that are, one or two, that are appropriate as an educational thing for our viewers. Occasionally we pick a shooting that is a good self-defense case. Occasionally they're not so good, and occasionally they're just actually stupid cases. But I picked them out so our listeners will have the educational value of understanding what happened and to not get into that same situation themselves, if possible. Fired Up is a nationwide show, actually, goes all over the world. So the answers we supply, and my guest attorneys will supply, are appropriate generally for Nevada law. Where you live, if you are involved in an active case, this is our disclaimer, don't rely on information about it from this show. Get a local attorney. The law varies jurisdiction to jurisdiction on what you can and cannot do in self-defense. Local law prevails. My guest tonight is Las Vegas attorney Paola Armani. Welcome to the show,
thank you for having me. Thank you.
Would you be so kind? You've been on before, but it's been a while. Would you give the viewers a little bit of your background in law and how you got here?
Sure. I actually graduated from William S. Boyd School of Law here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I am currently the managing partner of Gentile Cristalli Miller Armeni Savarese, where I practice in the areas of criminal defense. A lot of times I have self-defense cases, and then I also do a lot of civil rights litigation, excessive force cases.
Okay, well, we're having a lot of those now. We're going to talk here about a case that came up in Colorado Springs, Colorado on the 13th of last month. A store clerk in this instance defended himself with a pistol during an armed robbery, and he's now out of a job. This guy may need a civil rights attorney. He's fired for bringing a gun into the store. What happened, basically, is 2 weeks ago, he was working the overnight shift at a Western convenience store on Fillmore Street in Colorado Springs when 2 armed individuals entered the store around 3 a.m. They pointed their weapons at him, demanding money. Looking down at the barrel of a gun that you know is wielded with hostile intent is frightening, the clerk said, of course. When the suspects did not pointed their weapons at his face, he drew his gun. They kept pointing at my head. I stepped out from behind cover, he told the officers, and drew my weapon. The suspects reacted. They're frightened by the gun. The clerk tried to grab one of the suspect's weapons, and he was shot in his left arm when he did that. When he reached for the gun, one of them fired. At the end of this, he was taken to the hospital with a minor injury and came back to work that same morning at 5 a.m. or something. The night of the shooting was the first time he had ever brought his pistol to work. After hearing of other robberies that happened that week at another company store, one clerk having been assaulted and taken to the hospital, the other involving an armed robbery where the suspect walked in with a shotgun, he decided to bring his pistol to work. So, no harm, no foul. He's hit, and he didn't fire a shot. 2 weeks after the event, just a few days ago, he got a call from his boss that said he was being let go. He told the media, "I accepted the risk and I understand working overnight at a gas station is dangerous. What I don't accept is the company that won't let me take care of those dangers for their employees and instead fires me for protecting himself." Remember, he didn't fire a shot in this whole incident. He didn't chase the guy outside. He tried to get the gun away. They shot him. They ran. He called 911, and now he's out of a job. He still does not regret, he said to the media, pulling his gun to defend himself. He said if he hadn't had it, he might very well be dead. The convenience store's corporate office, surprisingly, did not return calls to the media for comment on this. Pal, this certainly appears to be a valid self-defense case. I brought it up while you're here because to me it's more of a civil rights case.
This is shocking. I don't know. I can't even comprehend how he could get fired for protecting himself. I mean, absolutely. There was a 50-50 chance he was either he was going to die or protect himself, and he chose to protect himself. And thank goodness, because it at least scared the perpetrators here. In another situation, that may not very well have happened. Yeah. It's almost like the gun in this situation absolutely saved his life. And you would think, God forbid, this gentleman that pulled the gun died. I mean, you wonder if his family would have had a suit against the store for not failing to protect. Well,
yeah, or a customer got shot or another employee or whatever, but he didn't fire a shot.
He didn't fire a shot.
He got shot. He didn't chase the guy outside. He didn't,
No, I mean, he had, this saved his life. Having a gun this day saved his life. There's no doubt.
Absolutely.
No doubt at all. So for them to then, the poor gentleman gets shot, and then this is how he gets treated by his company. I mean, this is a little bit mind-blowing.
Well,
they would take this avenue.
Yeah, that's why I pull this up when I tend to do my stories for the attorney or the expert that I'm having on as a guest because it is in their area. And I looked at this and thought,
yeah,
boy, this guy, you can't do it better than this. And after 2 weeks, they don't even come in and tell him he's fired. They call him and say, by the way, don't come to work tomorrow. It's just
doesn't make any sense that they would. I mean, he was protecting himself. Like you said, he didn't shoot, so there wasn't even anything. So are they upset with him that he brought a gun into the store?
They're not in any danger of a lawsuit because he didn't hurt anybody.
No, he sure didn't.
So why are they, it absolutely makes no sense at all. Anyway, we're going to be at a commercial here in just a moment. So I have a time clock now. I can see the countdown, unlike my other show where I didn't know how much time I had left, more or less. After the break, we're going to bring in another interesting case from the Associated Press that has to do with firearm insurance, which we are all encouraging our people to have gun insurance if they have a firearm in their house or carry one. So we will do that. When we come back, we're going to have some messages from our sponsors. Hang on, we'll be right back. And we are back. Once again, this is Bob Irwin coming to you live on Fired Up. The Chicago Tribune and the Associated Press reported back on the 19th of October, did a story on the National Rifle Association. They're offering now insurance for gun owners. And it covers liability and all sorts of things, and they have varying levels of doing their insurance and helping provide attorneys if you make a mistake with a gun or get a problem with the ATF about how you handle a gun or something. Pretty standard practice now. There have been a couple of companies doing that. The NRA came up with a new program that's called Carry Guard Insurance. The opposite side, a group called Guns Down, it's a gun control group of some sort. I had never heard of them until this Chicago Tribune Associated Press story came out. But they are calling it murder insurance. They say that is rather than promote personal responsibility and protection, it encourages gun owners to take action and not worry about the consequences. They say it's being marketed in a way that feeds on the nation's racial tensions. We know we have to get a race card in there somewhere. The Guns Down gun control group apparently was formed last year and is running an ad campaign to criticize the NRA's insurance. It's just the latest in the group's aim to take down the NRA's offering. This is from Guns Down Director. I'll leave his name out, but the reason I call it murder insurance is because if you look at it the way it is marketed, it's sold in a context of there is a threat around every corner, dear mostly white NRA member, and the threat is either a black man or a brown man or some other kind of person of color. So when inevitably you have to use your gun to defend yourself from this threat around every corner, you have insurance to protect you. This group is disgusting in any number of ways, but Carry Guard was launched by the NRA a year ago. It starts at like $14 a month for $2,500 in civil protection and $50,000 for criminal defense. And there are gold policies that cover you for higher limits if you need or feel you need more insurance. The NRA isn't the only gun group that is offering insurance. Most of you are familiar with the United States Concealed Carry Association. They've been doing this for years. I've been buying insurance from them myself, all honesty here on the broadcast. And they have programs that supply up to $2 million in civil costs and $2,500 in criminal defense. But the NRA, being a more prominent group, is getting all the publicity, and now that it's offered this same type of insurance. Guns Down advertising campaign casts a spotlight on the policies and asks the two insurance companies involved in issuing the insurance to drop it, to quit writing these policies. To quote them again, they spend millions lobbying for laws that allow shoot first and stand your ground, but it makes it easier to get away with murder. Their words. Pale. Murder insurance?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Is murder really going to be covered by an insurance company? Now, if we're talking about the bigger issue, homicide and justifiable homicide, well then that suggests that maybe that somebody should be covered, because now we've got, yes, they had to use their firearm. Yes, unfortunately, somebody was dead. But if there is a belief or the defense is that it's a justifiable homicide and you find there's a finding by a jury that it's justifiable homicide, why on earth should they not have this sort of insurance to help them out? To me, it's very different than having a murder case where it's truly a murder case and there was a malicious intent to kill somebody, a premeditated intent to kill somebody. Malicious here, if there's a difference, right? There are different levels of murder, and if it's a justifiable homicide, then I don't see an issue with the insurance.
Yeah, I'm looking at it as covering drivers. If you accidentally run over a pedestrian, this is Las Vegas, we have one of those every 2 minutes or so, or 3 minutes.
Right.
Your insurance would cover you. If somebody steps off the curb in the dark, out of the crosswalk, etc., and you're not drinking and you hit a pedestrian, that's what your car insurance will come up with a defense for you if it's needed. If you're drunk driving and run them down on purpose, they don't cover that.
No.
They don't cover intentional acts, is what I'm
Right.
where I'm trying to go. So if it doesn't cover drunk drivers, people who are committing crimes, it isn't murder insurance. It's
No.
not to defend criminals. The insurance won't pay. unless I'm reading this totally wrong, your insurance doesn't cover criminal acts.
No, and I read it like you do, and we all know that there are cases out there where somebody has used self-defense, and unfortunately there was a deceased person, and as a result have been charged criminally, and have maintained from the beginning that it was self-defense, perhaps called immediately 911, and those are the kind of cases that this insurance would benefit.
I would think so, and I'm just, look at this group with basically, apparently Guns Down came out of nowhere. They've been in business, it was formed last year. This article came out of Associated Press in 2017, so they were a year old, or a year and a half old at the most, and they're coming up with this attack that this is murder insurance, so people shouldn't buy.
Does that make everybody with a gun a murderer? I mean, I think it's a pretty big jump.
You can't really insure murderers.
No.
Can you?
No.
I mean, if
No,
somebody
you
write me a
cannot.
policy, if
I mean-
I may kill somebody on purpose later, can I get an insurance policy that covers
No,
me?
and most of even the life insurance policies, right? The life insurance policies, you don't get to benefit if you commit murder. You're not
Yeah,
going
you
to
can't
reap the
benefit from their
benefits of
death
it.
if you-
So
yeah.
I've got to imagine NRA's policy is similar to that.
Anyway, this struck me because of the racial overtones, saying that you're a mostly white NRA member, and you're going to get attacked by a person of color, and that's why this is murder insurance. And that, for them to pull the race card in this type of thing is just crap. I find this whole situation disgusting, and like I say, I don't know who Guns Down is. I've been in this industry for 35 years. There's a lot of left-wing groups out there preaching gun restrictions, nobody should own more than 2 guns and that kind of thing. But to say that you get insurance because you're going to shoot a minority is disgusting. Hopefully these people won't last very long. I'm sure they have some followers that think they're just doing something wonderful, saving the world. But they are not. If they discourage people from getting insurance for accidents and mishaps with guns.
Right, for reasonable uses of their firearm. I mean,
everybody makes mistakes with guns.
Sure.
And I've often said that there are people who say they've never had an accidental discharge, and there are people who say they're never going to have an accidental discharge. That second group is wrong.
right. Well, you hope so, but
they're-
the reality is something different.
When you talk to people in real life, have you ever found a gun loaded you thought was empty? You remember unloading it, and now it's loaded? Of course. It happens. That is really the basis of our show. I'll be back into a little close in a bit. Paula, I thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on. You're
Thank
a
you for
delight.
having me.
And this is a work in progress, this show. It is going to be, as they're putting in more and more stuff, websites coming up. We'll be back with some closing comments right after this. While we're on the subject of insurance, we were talking off the air while the commercials were on, and there is a case that's currently operating in Clark County where we had, it's one of a series of cases that have happened where a child gets a hold of a gun that is not safely stored, or for some reason it is accessible to the child. I've been involved in 3 or 4 of these cases over the years, and they're all slightly different, but we have one currently in the system that I'm not sure what's going to happen with it, but the parent left a gun, as I recall, hidden in a drawer in the living room area, and his child found the gun, or it was in a bedroom, I guess.
I think it was in a bedroom.
Bedroom,
That's
yeah.
what I remember, maybe in a drawer in a bedroom.
Yeah, a drawer in the bedroom, and the child was unsupervised. They were home, but the child was in the bedroom, and got a hold of the gun and shot himself. Unfortunately, the child looked down the gun barrel apparently and pressed the trigger. and was killed. And the issue that came up was the local authorities are charging them with a crime,
Right.
which is punishable by a couple of years, I believe. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I
what
don't
the
know what they're charging
charge
them with. I
was, but
believe they were felonies, though.
yeah, they were serious felonies. On the idea that this would serve, we've had a lot of these child things that would serve as a warning to parents not to do that. And I take issue with that because I don't think the parents that leave guns out all the time pay attention to what the court system is doing in a case like that. I don't think it's really going to serve as a warning because nobody's going to see that. I don't know, have you ever, I'm looking at this, I'm going, you know, how more could you punish
Right.
the parents?
You can't. I mean,
They're responsible for their own child's death, and now we're going to
criminally charge them.
put them in jail over it. How much they're going to be disturbed, destroyed by that for the rest of their natural lives.
And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's nothing worse than being responsible for the death of your own child. But I think that's the balancing act. I'm not sure I know the answer. But like you said, how much more can you punish them? But I think the problem is this continually is happening, right? And there is, something needs to be fixed with that part of it. And I think from the district attorney's point of view, they believe that by maybe charging these parents, that'll warn other parents that you need to be more responsible. I mean, you teach classes, right? I mean, this is, I'm sure, how would you handle a situation like this when you're telling people that have young kids in the house how to store their firearms? I mean, there seems like there should be a rational, reasonable person wouldn't leave their firearm out when they have a young child running around.
There have been dozens of these. We had a police officer on the East Coast. I recall the case. He came home. He put his gun, took it out of his holster and put it on the kitchen table. Then he hung up his gun belt and whatever he had it in. And he was standing, hanging up the gun belt, and his child reached up on the table and grabbed the gun and by the trigger and killed his father.
Oh my goodness.
You know, there's been all that stuff, and none of you gun guys have, if you tell me you've never found a gun loaded that you thought was unloaded, you're lying. How many times in your life have you gone to get a gun out of your safe or out of wherever and you forgot? You thought you unloaded it. You remember unloading it because you do that every time. And the one time you're distracted, you remember unloading it, but not that time. You remember that you generally unload it.
Your habit.
Yeah, one of my earliest training things was with a 2-week academy years and years ago, and the instructor was a retired Secret Service officer. And great guy, master shooter. I mean, it was a great class. 2 weeks of instructor school was more than most of us could bear. And he told the story on himself that he carried a 5-shot ankle gun when he was off duty and a 6-shot revolver on duty. They're both 38 specials because even though the carry gun was a .357, they were required to carry 38s at the time. We're going back a ways. Anyway, so he goes and unloads his 6-shot revolver and his 5-shot revolver, and he puts it in the safe, and he unloads the 6-shot revolver, and he's got an extra round left over because he's going to put the 6-shot ammo in the 5-shot. So he puts that round back in the 6-shot revolver and puts it in the safe. And days later, when he goes to get the gun, it's always empty in the safe. Why would you store the extra live round? At that time, they had to count for their rounds. They're painted red, and they have so many red rounds, and they, you know, to count for them at every inspection. So when he took the gun out of the safe, he pointed in a safe direction at the ceiling, and pulled the trigger, and of course, he's in the basement of his house. The bullet, it fired, the bullet went through the ceiling, through the floor, and lodged in the chair that his wife was sitting in nursing her baby.
Oh, my goodness.
Their baby. It didn't penetrate through the chair, didn't hit the wife. He immediately ran upstairs, and she's going, oh, what? Something wrong with this chair.
Heard something.
It can happen. You will find a gun loaded that you really believe is unloaded. You keep it, if you obey the first rule, you always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. If the wife's on the other side of the wall doing dishes, you know, don't point the gun at the wall, sort of thing. Boy, that was misogynist, wasn't it? If your wife's working on her engineering project for the university while you're doing the dishes and you have your gun sitting there in the sink. We have insurance because we make mistakes. That's what the gun insurance would cover. And if you leave guns out, if you own guns, you are going to have an accident if you believe that you will. Maybe you believe it's strong enough you never will have one.
Hopefully.
If you check the gun every time, if you always point the gun in a safe direction, always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction, even if you know it's empty and you've checked it 40 times, don't point it at your friend while you're talking to him about your gun. Right. If you're not in front of the barrel, if you obey that one rule, you're never going to accidentally shoot anybody. Simple.
That's a good rule to follow.
Safe direction.
Safe direction.